this would have just thrown them for a loop. They're for them to see and to try to understand, because at the point Jesus is talking to them, it appears that they were consumed with their reputation, how people were seeing them, and that they were seeing them in a very positive way. So we have talked about things like this that we're seeing, and he goes on and he said, okay, there's a reward mentioned in all three of these. We mentioned it here too. For then you will have no reward. And that's going to be kind of sad as well, as he plays that out with all three of these different things. He'll use the word reward twice in each one. What do you feel about God being one that rewards? When you get a reward, why do you get a reward? Forget God for a second, but in general. You do a good job. Right. What else?
You turn somebody in
that was bad. Yeah. Recognition. Now, if you take that and you talk about God's reward, you begin to think of how much you can begin to see how much bigger the concept is for us. Now, he's going to talk very directly to these three things with a view toward them understanding if they're doing it for their own reward, their own just their own good. They're building their self-esteem, or as people would see them. He's going to say you don't have a reward other than people are going to pat you on the back or something of that nature. And so that becomes the why, and becomes the why not. The why and why not is, well, why can't I just go through and do this and be like a Pharisee and complain when I don't get the credit? Well, because there's a problem with that. And as he talks about this problem, it's not just that the Pharisees have it wrong, but it is that you don't want to have it wrong. Because this is something that can be very much a human characteristic of pride, of selfishness, of being just being self-absorbed in order to, and even taking some of his top list stuff and using it as something that you would build your own character with or your own reputation. But look at this. Beware the Pharisees, hypocrisy. That's going to be the thing. Don't give to the poor like they give. And we'll look at the passage. This is verse 2 of Matthew chapter 6. And here's what he says. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. That's not instant gratification, is it? We're not used to having to wait a little while. But in this picture, he's going to be very clear. He begins by saying, when you give to the needy, that's assumed. That is assumed that that's going to be a part of who we are, that's a part of the fellowship of what we do, is giving to the needs of others. When we look in verses 2, 5, and 16, Jesus assumes his hearers were already doing these things. We just read where we're seeing giving to the needy. But his assumption is they're doing it. It was extremely important for the Jews to be involved with the giving, to give to the poor. It was very much a significant expectation. Giving to the poor, I'm told that any act of mercy or pity is a good way to define the principle that he's discussing here. So it would involve a lot of things. What kind of things could it involve? Of course, give money to the poor. What else comes to mind? All of the necessary things people need.
Take him to the doctor, to the hospital.
Do what now?
Take him to the hospital or to the doctor.
Yeah, be available to help them make their doctor trips and stuff. I think that as we would look at this, if we were to talk about it much more, we would begin to see that the idea of giving to the poor could become much, much larger. We think pretty narrowly because those are the things that we most often have access to, most often we need to do. But when it comes to looking at the poor, and it comes to looking at the hurting, or those who are in need of assistance, there are a lot of ways in which it would fit into this idea of an act of mercy or an act of pity. Not only sympathetic feelings, but genuine actions taken to relieve those in trouble. It's interesting at times to just hear of this kind of thing happening by individuals here, and I love to hear, and it's not something that anybody's necessarily blowing a horn about, but there are a lot of good things that are happening that would fit into this. And a lot of times, if not most of the time, there's a desire to keep it quiet. Okay, poverty was widespread in the ancient farming community or society, and the people of Israel took their obligation to help the poor seriously. It was a part, they didn't have welfare. They didn't have government that would take care. Roman could care less about them. And the wherewithal of each local Jewish government was what this would discuss. And here is in Deuteronomy 15, for there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore, I command you, that you shall open wide your hand to your brothers, to the needy, to the poor in your land. And that's all in Deuteronomy. Does a lot of discussion about the responsibility under law. So they took it seriously and they did it, and probably the Pharisees likely did it as well. But that wasn't the problem. It didn't seem to be, at least at this point, Jesus is not concerned that they're not doing it. He's concerned in how they're doing it. Then he said, don't be sounding the trumpet before you when you're doing them, as the hypocrites do in the synagogue and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. It was interesting to look at some research. It's an apocryphal book, the Tobit. For alms giving saves from death and purges away every sin. And they made in some of the research, they made the statement that was very much a thought of the Jew, that by their righteous deeds, even along this kind of a line, the giving of alms would be the hope of their salvation. Jesus warned his disciples against being hypocritical in giving to the poor. The sounding of a trumpet in the synagogue, there were There were horns and things of that nature that were used. A lot of people believe that it's like, don't blow your own whistle or sound your own horn, blow your own horn. But whatever it is, it has to do with this mistake, this bad heart that the Pharisee has, that they're just not getting that their faith is all about God, that their service is all about God, that helping people it's all about God, and none of it is about them. But would this not be consistent with some of the discussions we've had about law? If they have gotten into a frame of mind where their relationship with God is only the law, and it is, the law is part of the relationship, don't get me wrong, but that's the only thing, then this would make sense, as they would really look at anything that they would do. They would turn it into a legal thing. Whether it's literal horns or metaphoric, it was all to glory themselves. Hypocrites. In Jewish circles, when they used a term that was originally, we translated into hypocrites, it was the play actors or the pretenders. And there was a lot of play actors and pretenders. When we come to giving, who is the hero other than Christ? Who would you say in the Gospels is presented as the hero giver? In the Gospels, who would you say?
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist. What about this little old lady? You think about it, and that image, I love that image myself, but that image helps me. It helps us to know what Jesus is also trying to teach. It's not the physical things that are happening here. Not even the fact that the poor are being taken care of. It is God being honored. Is God being praised? Are we being obedient? Yes, but is God being honored, or are we doing it to get honored ourselves? And they were even talking when they were looking at the horn things. They said it might be this thing, because they made it this way so nobody could just reach in and take the money. But it's metal, and if you put lots of coins in it, it makes a lot of money or a lot of noise. And that some of the more wealthy ones would come and make sure they made a lot of noise with it. I wouldn't doubt that, but I'm not sure that's what it was. But do you see that Jesus definitely has a different idea of giving? And that's why someone like the widow could be the hero. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. That'd be pretty disheartening. But if that's all you're after, is to get this, personal pat on the back, then, go with it. But it's not, there's nothing eternal to it.
Got pretty bad. The extreme example would be like Ananias and Sapphira.
Oh, yeah.
With
lying about it.
There was a huge thing there going on. We all know the story.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing that for your own recognition. You could have kept back part of it, but for the recognition. So,
yeah.
God, the Holy Spirit was very serious about that.
Yeah, you lied to the Holy Spirit. I thought you were Peter. I didn't know that you were the Holy Spirit. But and that's an ideal illustration, because here they are. They sold the field so they could help the Christians, or at least that was the purpose others were doing. And they could have given whatever they wanted, but they wanted to look better than they really were, and they only gave a part of it and kept back, but told Peter they had given it all. That's kind of the mentality of this giving that has something for us. And there were others, by the way, that were selling and giving
That's actually how it started, wasn't it? I think actually when Barnabas?
Yeah, Barnabas was
Barnabas,
one.
and then he kind of set the bar, so they, after him, I thought they could.
Yeah, he must have gotten some real attention. But I don't think, it appears God honored his gift, so his attitude must have been much better. When you give to the needy, you just remember, spell it out. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So you always give with one hand in your pocket. Right, Jordan? Yeah. They actually, when one of the practices of the Jew was that when, and I don't know how widely it's a practice, I just ran across it, was that when you give alms or give something, you do it with only one hand. Not that you have to have the other one in your pocket, but that you do it with only one hand. And obviously that's kind of misunderstanding what this thing is about. But don't let your right hand know what your left hand, or your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Now, you deal with a lot of people who give money here, Brenda, and so you see that in practice. You know, people go a long way sometimes to try to make sure that this is done without anybody knowing. But use Barnabas as an example. Do you think he would, because it would seem to be common knowledge that he had sold property and given to the poor, but people knew it. So it's not just simply the act of someone else knowing it. It's what you got in your head, what you got in your heart. Is it given humbly? Once you've done it, there is a sense of feeling a joy, but let it be the joy of having given. Let it be the joy of letting people know that this is in the name of God that we've given. Acts of giving are to be done as discreetly as possible. What do you think about that statement? That's kind of the one I came up with. What do you think about that statement? I think that's pretty much right. We give here, and I think Brenda's the only one that knows what is given. We don't. George plays with the books, but she does a lot of the everyday stuff. Yeah, he's bringing things together most of the time. But it's kind of wonderful to have something that you and God do together. That you have in this relationship with God that you and God know about, and that it's a kind of a mutual thing and a great joy to do. Yeah.
I think it talks about putting one hand in the pocket. I think if you think about when you're giving about something, if you think about, you start thinking about it, you may back out.
Yeah,
but you need to think about the need.
No, George. Yeah, I agree. I know what you're saying. Yeah, just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you may think, can I really afford to do that?
Yeah.
And you go ahead and do it, and everything comes out good.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what I last 3 months.
I'll tell you a little of Mark's craziness. For years, I
have enough time?
Yeah, I've only got short stories. I can't remember the long ones. But for years, I just wanted to be able to give. I would give on Sunday, but it never was what I wanted to give. And it broke my heart, not to be able to do it. But on the other side, I was always receiving. And that's not a healthy place, or it may be a healthy place, but it's not a place that I wanted to stay. I wanted to be a part of the process of helping. And I think we all kind of feel that. I've talked to other young people as they're raising their family, and they're overwhelmed by the costs and stuff. And they're frustrated with the idea of giving and how much or whatever. But understand the heart.
Nevada was a classic example of giving. And he raised me right to try to
Speak up, I can't hear you.
Nevada was a classic example of giving, and when he died, and we had his service, people, I knew the people, some of them, but they came up to me saying what he had done and the money he had given and how he helped and how he checked and things I didn't know anything about. And one of them was a young girl that's daddy died, and she was on his insurance route. And she was a grown woman, and she said, your daddy came by my house every couple of weeks to see if we had food and any needs we had. I never knew that.
Yeah.
And I can just remember one time he slipped $100 bill in somebody's hand going out to church. And it was, I don't know if it was their birthday or something,
Yeah.
but they thought he had given them a $10 bill. So they called the house and, oh, Miss Brenda, thank you. And I go, I think you got the wrong person. But he was like that. He was very generous,
Very, very.
and he managed his money.
Yeah.
He
It wasn't
always
as
had-
though he was really
I thought
real
we were
wealthy.
poor many a day. But anyway, a lesson my daughter's taught me, Lisa. You're talking about how you felt sometimes you couldn't give, and she said, you think about, do you manage your credit cards? Do you get in debt where you're strapped? And said, when you try to manage things correctly, then you can do it. But if you live on the edge.
That's the ideal world if you're making,
Yeah.
$100,000
Well,
a
anyway,
year.
there's just
Plus.
different things you can do because we all want to give.
Oh, always.
I've had sleepless nights on people here that, needed and
You know.
just different things, but, he was a true
Yeah.
example of quietly giving.
I've sat in through VP Black's giving Rust as a witness, and Jack Exum's giving, and him telling us to put a number, what we give in the corner of an index card and say, now lift your finger and look at it, and that's how much you love God. That's foolishness, people.
Yeah.
That's foolishness. And VP Black had his ways of doing the same thing. I'm not making excuses for anything. God's mercy is the only reason I'm going to get anything right. But I do believe that there is a spirit of giving, and it's not, as we saw in the widow, it's not necessarily how much. It's the heart that's behind it. And so, as we do, the whole process of giving. Do you realize that the only example that we have of giving is a special offering? The church, it doesn't appear, got together every Sunday and took up money for just the church. It took up money to help the poor people in Jerusalem until that money was taken. Now, it may have become a practice. It's what people would generally say.
They
That
didn't have air conditioners, awesome buildings.
yeah, I know. But what we have is God wants, and I heard the term free will offering is one I've heard, and I guess that defines pretty close what we want, and if it's in 1 Corinthians 13 verses 1 through 3, take everything you got and give it to the poor, and if it's done for any other reason other than love, it's not worth a nickel to you. So in all of these things he's talking about, we've been exposed to the concepts by just watching the life of Christ and seeing and hearing the apostles and as they write the epistles and others who wrote the letters to the churches. And it's something that we can get our mind around. Secret, without attempting to attract attention, is maybe a way to see this idea of secret, unquote, as the hypocrites did. Also, the Jewish Mishnah. This is a book, part of their law, and it says this: the temple had a secret place where the humble Jews could give alms without being seen. So they honored that. It wasn't that was where all the giving was done, but it appears from their own writings that there was a way that they could give in complete secrecy. Another thought, the Jewish Talmud, another one of their books, a man who gives charity in secret, notice this, is greater than Moses, our teacher. Their whole, and Moses was considered quite significant. But I'm sure in making a point, that was what was said. Look at this one. Also in the Talmud, the giver ought not know to whom he is giving. And the receiver ought not to know from whom he receives. Now, you see other things being practiced, but this would be one of the Jewish rabbis' opinion on how to fulfill the law. That's the kind of books that we're talking about. And so here we are with just some real down-to-earth kind of approach to the law, but to do it in such a be faithful to the law in such a way as to honor God in the process. Jesus didn't appear to be teaching that every act of giving to the poor has to be in secret. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. So here there were good works. He wanted them to see good works. And here he didn't want to see it. But let's say that one of the good works was to give. Okay? What's the difference in the two? One says, don't let anybody know it. The other one would say, let people know. What's the difference?
One would be if it takes it from being selfish. The other would be glorify God in heaven.
It's the difference in heart, I think. This has always been kind of a challenge for me in looking at it, and but I think that when you balance, it's in chapter 5, verse 16, so we saw it some time back, and yet we see this in chapter 6 and verse 3. You know, it is, if we take every statement in the Bible as an absolute, every time, all the time, has to be done that way, somebody's going to have to figure that one out for me. You've got to read the Bible understanding, or at least trying to understand the motive. Jesus is doing what in the Sermon on the Mount? He's correcting problems. He's correcting the Pharisees. He's going to spell it out. But what's he doing here in this one part of the Sermon on the Mount? Well, he's encouraging people to be involved with good works that other people can see, and they can now absolutely be a part of them becoming Christians and honoring God as a result. The reasoning behind Jesus we saw this in the discussion of marriage. Jesus makes some absolute statements when he's dealing with issues. Paul does this. I don't want to take lightly any of it, but when there's two passages, then you say, okay, he's talking to Pharisees here. So he's shaking his finger in their face. He's talking to people who are giving the effort here. And he's saying, go ahead, let's get this. You need to be involved in doing the kind of kingdom work. So let people see your good works. And so they can glorify your Father. Now, can they get it wrong and become this? Yeah. Again, it's a difference in attitude. So we've got all kinds. So we've got both sides. If we're going to be straining at a gnat and swallowing a camel, with whether I can give it with my left hand or my right, then get over it. But if you have the opportunity to help someone, and you know that they would honor God if they saw, because this is only the change they made in my life. It had to be of God. I'll tell on Amy again. I've done this. She's not here. But Amy was in the story. She's told the story, so forgive me if you've heard it or remember it. She was in a grocery line, and there was a person in front of her that didn't have enough money to pay for her food, and she gave her the money. And she said, thank you. And Amy said, don't thank me, thank Jesus. A few years ago, I wouldn't have done that. That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I was thinking. It's a different kind of giving. Like
it is. It might be the same amount.
Right.
It might be the same kind of effort.
Right. The teacher that I've worked with her for 3 years. She's like, y'all's church, because I would always say, well, I got to do this and I got to do that. She's like, this church does so much in our community. That to me is showing your work and
Yeah.
like John.
Giving the glory to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous for some people to try this. Maybe somebody's not quite mature in Christ or something. I don't know. I said that, now that I think about it, probably not. But I see a vulnerability here. Is what I see. A vulnerability here. But think about it from this perspective. Well, isn't it amazing when you know you've done something, or you've said something, or you've taught something that you know has honored God and has helped someone in whatever way? Doesn't it feel good to honor God in that way? It's not necessarily just yourself, but to honor God with time.
I think there was a song, I don't remember the name of it, that talked about when I get to heaven, or when I got to heaven, there was somebody that came up to me and, he had no clue who they were. And
Yeah.
You don't remember, but you did this. That's,
There's been many a story about missionaries who have converted moms and dads of kids, and another generation or so, as the missionary gets older, the children come and say thank you. You know, that was always a part of their understanding. They taught their children about who and how they became Christians.
One of the biggest blessings I get every week is write my check to the church.
No, no, it's an honor. Yeah, it's an honor. Jordan?
I didn't have anything else. Thinking out loud.
Thinking out loud. I thought I heard a squeak. That's probably what that was. It appears his primary focus is on the hypocrisy of the Pharisees' activity, not the activity itself. It's the Pharisees are the ones that have created the issue. Giving was not to be a self-promoting activity, but evidence of the work of God in the giver's life. That I like. I stole it from somebody, but that I like. That puts something in my head that seems to ring true. Do we stop at quarter after or at 6? Yeah, I think we do, don't we? Yeah, right. I'm going to call it here. I was planning on calling it a couple of slides, but there's too much. Take this home with you and just let it roll. I hope that as we're reading and we're studying these passages that we are kind of confused, trying to figure out, where is this? Where am I? How am I dealing with these concepts, and how am I dealing with them in my life? But let Jesus ultimately be the clarifier. So, I was going to call on Terry to lead a prayer, but Terry probably doesn't want to. Yeah, I always just kind of throw my finger up, and you happen to be in line with it. So Brian, you're right behind me.
Wait till Brian.
Most kind of gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity we've had together to come together tonight, Father, to listen to another lesson from Mark tonight. We thank you, dear Lord, for his efforts and his abilities, Father. I pray that you'll help us to consider how we should give from the heart, Father, to do those things because we love you and love other people. Pray, dear Lord, that you will touch our hearts in a way to help us to give more generously, maybe than we have in the past, Father, or create opportunities, or just, as George said, when they come before us, just act. Don't think about it, just do it. And I pray, Father, that you'll bless us in those ways, dear Lord, to have those opportunities to do the things you have us to. Pray, dear Lord, that we will consider all these things and others in ways to build each other up and to build up our community and to bring glory to you, Father, and your kingdom, and bring souls to Christ. Pray that you be with our many that are sick right now, Father, and beds of hospital. Lift up Star tonight, specifically, Father, and Jeff Granberry, and Boyce, and many others that are struggling with health issues right now. Pray that you would put your healing hands on them, Father, and touch them in a very special way. That you forgive us when we fail you. It's in Christ's holy name we pray.
Hey, Mark,
Yes, sir.
I need some help with the freezer out there.
Okay.
Glenn
On the
was gonna
porch?
tell you
On
about
the
his
porch.
brother too.
Somebody come talk to me about it.
Glenn, tell us about your brother.
He's getting a break from radiation. He finished his last round yesterday. He goes back Monday for chemo, but before he does that, he's gotta do a Friday for blood test to make sure his blood cells count good.
Yeah.
He's been real close to, needing oxygen. His blood was a drop going up now, where they're gonna give him oxygen at home. He's been struggling with the knee, that he was gonna have replaced before this whole thing ever started. He was getting that scheduled and set up when all this was discovered. So he's been bothered by bad knee through all this, and tomorrow they're supposed to give him a cortisone shot to help that.